Okay, so I've had some audio difficulties on my recording device that I used before, and so I'm behind schedule here. So what I want to do, this was very important. I'm going to go straight to an article on Debkafile. And this article, I'll just start reading it off, and you can understand where this is going and why it's important to get a food supply ready. Moscow and Tehran link up to strike Israeli targets in response for U.S.-led operation in Syria. Tehran's resolve to make Israel pay for its airborne missile attack on the T4 air base was conveyed on April 11th by outing the 7 Revolutionary Guardsmen killed in the attack. Iran has never, in all 7 years of its intervention in the Syrian war, released its military casualties. But on Wednesday, April 11th, for the first time, the Iranian Guard's mouthpiece, the Tasnim news agency, ran the names and photos of the 7 members of the aerospace unit who died in the airborne missile strike on the Iranian compound of the big T4 bases it shares with the Russian and Syrian air forces. The agency also ran pictures of heavily damaged equipment. By coming clean about its painful setback, the Tehran regime implicitly assured the public that it was not in vain and it was committed to a reckoning with the enemy for the deaths and damage on display. The Supreme Leader's senior advisor Ali Akbar Velayati said so bluntly when he arrived in Damascus on Tuesday, Israel's airstrikes on the Syrian air base will not go unanswered, he said. As he spoke, Tehran gained support from its ally in Moscow with the visit of Alexander Lavrentiev, the special Russian emissary on Syria, in a long meeting with Iran's National Security Advisor Rear Admiral Ali Shamkhani. The Russian said Iran's decision for military response to the T4 attack was understandable. He then proposed combining Iran's action against Israel with Russia's plan for countering the forthcoming U.S., British, France operation in Syria. Did you get that? I'll read it again. He then proposed combining Iran's action against Israel with Russia's plans for countering the forthcoming U.S., British, France operation in Syria. I'm going to call this plan Operation Whipping Boy. That's right. Israel is to be the whipping boy for what U.S., British, and France are about to do in Syria. The Iranian and Russian officials were of one mind that the Israelis' T4 strike was the opening shot for that operation. The next round of attacks would target Iranian and possibly also Russian targets in Syria. On this point, they cited President Donald Trump, who said on Monday, April 9, in response to chemical attack in Duma, we cannot allow this atrocities like that. If it's the Russians, if it's Syria, if it's Iran, if it's all of them together, we'll figure it out. The Russian vetoed Tuesday night on the U.S. motion at the UN Security Council for an investigation into Duma attack sent this message to Washington. Moscow has completed its preparation for countering a U.S.-led strike in Syria. It also nixed a scenario advanced by some sources in Washington. They maintained that delaying the U.S. operation for final consultations with London and Paris would be beneficial since it would give the Russians time to evacuate the bases they shared with Iran and whisk their troops out of harm's way. Those sources misread Moscow's intent. The Russian ambassador to Beirut put them straight on this when he said on Wednesday, if there is a strike by the Americans, then the missiles will be downed and even launch sites will be targeted. Equally out of sync was the theory put about in the last 24 hours by some sources in Jerusalem that Israel has no part to play in the U.S., British, French punitive operation against Assad regime in Syria, since its interest only lies in preventing Iran from establishing a military presence in that country. Therefore, that theory is no longer relevant because Israel, whatever it does now, is no longer off the hook. For Moscow, Tehran, and Damascus, Israel is an integral part of the U.S.-led alliance and is seen to have fired the first shot for the main operation against Syria. Therefore, while Israel geared up initially for a limited Iranian strike from its northern border, it is now feared that a military location deep inside the country may be targeted. I hope you got that. During Wednesday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu conducted back-to-back consultations with his top security advisors, Defense Minister Lieberman, Chief of Staff Eisenkot, Air Force Commander Nurkin, Military Intelligence Director Major General Hyman, and the head of National Security Council, Ben Shabbat. Now, it's obvious now that if the US, the UK, and France, which they are preparing to do, strikes Syrian targets, the response by, well, first of all, you have to understand that Russia knows they cannot go toe-to-toe with the United States in a war. So what you do, how do I put this? What they plan on doing is hitting Israel to counter this coming strike on Syria, which of course, as we all know, that will be the opening shot in the Ezekiel 38 and 39 war. I hope everyone is paying attention. I will be doing a video about getting a food supply ready, why you should already have it, and if you don't, I encourage you to get started now. I will provide some helpful tips on how to do this, but one must understand that a food supply and a water supply is not going to ultimately save you. And I will talk about that and how you can be saved, but not the way your preacher taught you. I will get into that in the next video.